But for the magic that takes you out, far out of this time and this world, there is Skellig Michael, 10 miles off the Kerry coast, shooting straight up 700 feet sheer out of the Atlantic. Whoever has not stood in the graveyard on the summit of that cliff, among the beehive dwellings and their beehive oratory, does not know Ireland through and through.
What is Skellig Michael? A tall pinnacle of rock on the edge of Western Europe. 3 lighthouse keepers' solitaries share the cliffs and legends with thousands of seabirds, gannets and fulmars and stormy petrels. 1,300 years ago, an obscure St. Finian founded here on a ledge on the very peak, a monastery of hermit monks. These monks tended a light, a physical light, to guide the sailors. They also preserved a spiritual light, the wavering light of Christianity on the very edge of Europe. Skellig's is the edge, and man and bird look over it into infinity with joy and apprehension.
This road was a rough animal track that St. Finian, the first abbot of Skellig, and his 12 companions climbed up in the 7th century. In their frail boats, they had left their families and their country, the mainland of Ireland beyond, to seek God and salvation in the stony desert of the sea. Like the seabirds perched on a rock, they looked for a foothold on eternity. High places in Europe are dedicated to St. Michael. Mont Saint-Michel in France, St. Michael's Mount in Cornwall. Here on Skellig Michael, the monks built 3 stairways sheer out of the sea to scale the rock, all the 600 steps to the top. This stairway, the only one surviving, is a steep Jacob's ladder. One senses ghostly monks ascending and descending like angels between heaven and earth.
The Irish hermit monks of the 7th century, like their predecessors in the Egyptian desert, sought their desert in the sea. On Skellig Michael, they found their ultimate desert. Like St. Simeon's stylite on his pillar in the east, they perched their monastery on a pinnacle of rock in the west to contemplate the desert of the ocean, time and eternity.
Shall I take my little black curragh over the broad-breasted, glorious ocean, wrote one monastic scribe. O King of the bright kingdom, shall I go of my own choice upon the sea? The Irish hermits first left the monasteries in the valleys near the chieftains' forts to seek solitude and prayer in islands in lakes. Finally, they took skin boats and went to the utmost solitude, the desert in the sea. For the Western monks, the noonday devil of the hot desert was replaced by the raiding Vikings, who came horned and terrible to this monastery out of the sea. This is one of the most mystical and magical places in Europe. The monks perched their beehive huts and boat-shaped oratories on a ledge near the very ridge of the rock. Like gannets that build cliff-top nests to project themselves into flight, the monks sought height and danger for their spiritual exercises. In the words of John Montagu, the Irish poet, who wrote of these ancient monasteries, "In certain places still surprisingly you come upon them, resting like old straw hats set down beside the sea, weather-beaten but enduring through stubborn Atlantic surge and storm for a dozen centuries, in ragged groupings of these cells and caves of where the hermits, lonely dispossessed ones, found refuge among gulls and rocks, the incessant prayer of nearby waves." These round huts, built of courses of flat, dry stones, each course oversailing the other until they rise in a dome, were the monks' dwelling places. Here they slept short hours and rose in the watches of the night to pray. Here they ate their spare diet of bread and herbs and drank spring water from the wells. Their few clothes and book satchels hung from these ledges of stone. All around the island, cross slabs and roughly carved crosses mark out the territory for Christ. Where they predominate, though, is around this pathetic little patch of ground, like a raised garden bed, which was the monk's burial place. The large inchoate cross on my left is the rude forefather of all the great high Irish carved crosses. It predominates the monastic enclosure as it predominated the life of the hermits who lived here. The western desert is a barren, stony place, and stone is at the hard heart of the mystery of the urgent drive towards godliness of the monks. They left thatched cells in warm wooded valleys to seek this pinnacle of rock. Here they slept on stone beds, lived in stone huts, prayed at stone crosses, and lay, finally, in stony graves. As John Montagu concludes his poem, desolation final, rock within and rock without, till from the stubborn rock of the heart, the purifying waters spurt. Viking raiders and a worsening climate, and the very hardships of their extreme life, drove the monks off the Skellig rock after 300 years. They came back here to Ballinaskelligs, the town of the Skelligs, a more hospitable and permanent home inshore. Here the daily monastic round began again, the prayers, the fasts, the vigil hours, the psalter, the daily work of God. The sea still sighed beside them. One wonders, did they miss their isolated peak out in the Atlantic? Primitive boat-shaped oratories that topped the Skellig rock achieved their classical perfection here on the mainland in Gallerus oratory. The smooth, perfect keel of a boat petrified into stone, the whole building of dry stone without mortar, kept up without support, like the beehive huts, by the skill of the primitive builder. At Kilmacader, the cross and memorial pillar stone stand side by side. Those strokes down the shaft of the pillar are ancient Ogham writing, recalling buried chieftains. Here at Kilmacader is a fine example of a classical nave and chancel church, a little monastery. At Riask, the cross, which is the symbol of the monk's life, becomes on the stone slab something more elaborate. It flowers into a rich Celtic design. The traces of the stone huts on the ground are like the swirls and circles of the monks' illuminated gospel books, like those of Kells and Durrow. Still, they are finding sermons in stones. Des Lavelle is a boatman and a man with a feel for the seas and the rock, a guardian and an inheritor from the monks of old. He never loses his sense of the awe and mystery of Skellig Michael.
Skellig to me it's a kind of a totem pole. Not so much that I adore the rock for itself, but for the immense powers of nature that are represented there. You have on one hand the immovable rock, and on the other side the irresistible ocean. And there they are slogging it out century after millennium, neither winning, neither losing. Then add to that the other force of nature, the wild seabird life, the tens of thousands. You know, when you put all this together, it's little wonder to me that the old monks, or indeed others before them, it's little wonder to me that they sought out this place and used it, because it is a very, very special place. It's essential to have a tremendous respect for the ocean on the southwest coast of Ireland, because it's bigger than us, and it doesn't have the same standards that we have, and it will master you, and it will take charge. And if you as much as turn your back or drop your guard for 1 minute, it will win over you. So it's a very foolish person indeed who does not have recognition of this fact, that the ocean is the boss around here, and we are lucky to be able to use it, and we need to be clever and cautious to use it properly. The Atlantic is the safety valve for Skellig, and that it can never be overrun by people, because you can go there one day and maybe not visit it for another 10 days, even in the height of summer. So really, compared to any of the other monuments anywhere in the country, Skellig is really not getting the 1,000th part of the same attention from visitors. You can sit there on a ledge in Skellig, and time doesn't matter anymore. For a moment, you can be almost a seabird, you can be almost a monk, but particularly the seabirds induce this. They are the fulmars, complete masters of the wind. And for a moment, I can be such a bird, a millimetre or two of a feather, and you control the element of the wind. Sit in another place, and you can be almost a puffin in among the tens of thousands of them. You feel like you've arrived in Easter or April. You feel like that you've hunted a rabbit out of a hole and taken charge of it. You've raised one youngster, and then you feel in August it's time to go again. Sit down at the sea level, and you're a seal among the other seals. I go there maybe 70 times in a year, and each time is so different. There's nothing dull about it. It's not like a bus ride. You go on different sunshine, evening light, all the time. That place changes so much, and each change will induce in you a different feeling. And it's not just a physical change. There is a spirituality, there is a soul there that actually takes you and does something with you. Perhaps the universal appeal of Skellig is this, and this has struck more than one person. It's a place where fact and fiction don't matter so much anymore. For me, it's a place where the legends and the myths are just as valid as the concrete facts that we can see. And I don't strive for all the answers. I'm happy to believe as factual that some of the heroes of the Milesian invasions of Ireland were lost there. I believe as factual that a lighthouse is there today. I believe as factual that the spirit of a woman appeared to a priest in a pilgrimage boat once. These kind of things are better left undistinguished fact from fiction. It's more exciting that way. When you go there and look at the amount of work that these monks have done, and mind you, you won't see all of it in a day visit. You need to be there for days and nighttime as well to appreciate it. But when you see the amount of work they've done there, you can only conclude that they were driven by something, some challenge above and beyond the call of just building a dwelling. They did more than that. They did more than set up a little village. They did everything in excess. They built not one, but 3 stairways up from the sea level. So it all hinges on this vision I have of it, of the Skelligs being a challenging place, sitting out, daring you, not just to come and visit, but daring you to achieve a landing there and daring you to set up house in it. And this, I think, is what they were working at. They took that challenge at its face value and they worked on it.
Walter Horn is a professor emeritus from the University of California at Berkeley, the man who found and published the plan of St. Columba's Monastery at St. Gall in Switzerland. He is an expert on the buildings of the early Irish monks.
Well, the significance of Skellig Michael for an architectural historian, right, is that here, in a particular sense, and in a broader sense on all of the other Atlantic offshore islands of Ireland, you find early monastic architecture preserved in a much purer form than you would find it on the mainland. For some monks, even such a small monastic community was still too much of a barrier between them or him and God. The idea was to come closer to God by separating yourself from the family, from the tribe, and even from such a small community as 12 monks and an abbot. He went up to establish himself a hermitage on the South Peak. That hermitage consisted of a terrace in which he gardened on the lower level exposed to the sun. And we're inclined to believe that the dwelling was on a spot very close to the summit, on the other side, on the northern side of the thing, which nobody identified as such. Now, this climb up to the top of the South Peak is mentioned in the literature in connection with pilgrimage. It goes down 714 feet on one side and pretty badly down on that side too, so you cannot make a mistake. At the end of that spit, you know, that line shape, there's a split, and in that split there was a menhir which the pilgrims admired as a cross. All of these menhirs around, many of them are interpreted as crosses, right? The pilgrims' final accomplishment was to creep out on that ridge of the spit till you reach that cross and kiss it.
With evening, quiet falls on Skellig Michael. The stairways are silent. The pilgrim boats sail back to the mainland. The soft light of evening begins to throw a veil over the ocean. The seabirds are left alone to their vesper hour. The skill of the seabirds has, as Des Labelle has suggested, a spiritual quality about it.
The same spiritual quality, a grace under pressure, was what the monks sought here, perched like the birds on the height of the island. Monk and seabird, black and white. Skellig is their perch, their temporary resting place. Their ambition, though, is infinity, the infinite sea. While the pilgrims are gone and the birds quiet into rest, the vigilant lighthouse men are now beginning their nightly work. Someone is always on the lookout on the lonely peak of Skellig.
Well, to me, it's a second home, I suppose, for a start off. And it's something special. I've been, I suppose, to 10 other lighthouses, been stationed there for a different number of years, but none of them really could get you like this place. And I'm 6.5 years here now, and I hope to spend another couple. The solitude I like, maybe not everybody, but the only way to really come home to you is here in the evening time. As you know, you get a lot of people, hundreds of people on here in the daytime. And when they go away, that's the time I like this place. And it's back to the birds and ourselves. I met a fella by accident some years ago coming down here. And he happened to be the skipper of one of the weather ships. And I asked him what a lighthouse meant to him with all his modern equipment. And his answer was that, you know, no matter what equipment they have, when they get near a coast, especially a coast something like we have here, he said it's a nice thing to see a light.
The monks of Skellig Michael kept a light. The lighthouse men are their heirs. Soon, with unmanned lights, they too will be gone. Only the light and the birds will remain on the most western of Christ's fortresses.